Hello class and welcome back. As in our previous two videos where we went through the interfaces of Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop, in this video we're going to be going through the interface behind Adobe InDesign. I will say right off the bat that Adobe InDesign is a little bit more complex, and that's due to its status as what's called a desktop publishing software. What that means is basically whereas Illustrator and Photoshop are graphic or illustration based, meaning that they're there more for the creative side, InDesign is what most designers use to take those creative elements and rearrange them and get them ready for print. Maybe you have an illustration you need for a magazine cover, but you also need to lay out type. Well, I might create the illustration in Illustrator and then pull that into InDesign to really work with it, add type, and get it ready for the printing process, making sure the color modes are set correctly, so on and so forth. That all being said, this video is going to be a little bit longer than the other two, just so you know in advance. And also, all the information that I'm about to go over can also be found on pages 1 through 21 in your text. Again, that's pages 1 through 21 in the Adobe Against the Clock text. All right. So to get started, again, just like all the other ones, I'm going to go to my Start menu, All Programs, and Adobe InDesign. Like the others, we get the same welcome screen, where it shows that it's loading the programs, and we'll see in a moment where the full interface comes up. Like with Photoshop, like I said in the last video, do not download the software now. If you download it now, your trial will run out, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So instead, just watch through this video, read through your text, and that should give you more than enough information to complete the first Lesson 1 quiz. Alright, so you can see we have the same thing, 30 days left in trial. We've been through this before, so we can just click this, make this go away. And right off the bat, you're going to notice that there's a lot more up in the top area, in this dock, quote-unquote, area. Again, we have our menu bar like normal, still have where we can access, go to Bridge, go to Adobe Stock, same old, but you'll see that we have a lot of other elements here. Again, you can come to Essentials, and you have Advanced, Book, Digital Publishing, Interactive for PDF, so on and so forth. I'm going to reset Essentials, make sure everything's right there. You can see all it does is reset the one panel. If your interface does not look like this, like in the others, go and make sure that you reset the Essentials space. Now, very similar to Illustrator and InDesign, we have our Tools palette to the left and our Content panels to the right. In the left, some of these tools that you've seen before, some of them are new, like the Gap tool, which is used to help create column and grid systems and advanced graphic design pieces. The new Page tool, so how do you go around, shift between pages, so on and so forth. Content Collector, which is something to do with large volumes of text and how you stream those through your program. Type tools, line tools, pen tools for creating vector shapes, rectangle frame, and rectangle tool. I'm going to make a very important distinction between these. Rectangle tool is used to create solid shapes or shapes of color, and that is pretty much all it's used for. You can use it sometimes to create masks, but even with those, if you're going to create something that's solid or is used as a decorative element, use the shape tool, the rectangle tool, the circle tool, the oval tool. If you're going to be using the shape as a container for something else, say you want an image that is circle shaped or you need a mask that's rectangle shaped, use the frame tools, always. Having that distinction right out of the gate will help you a lot when you're designing your documents. Then we have the Scissors tool, Free Transform tool, which is pretty self-explanatory, Gradient Swatch tool, Gradient Feather tool, which is kind of a new thing they've introduced. Usually this was sitting somewhere else, but so many people wanted to feather off gradients that they added into the toolbar. You can see we have notes if you want to create notes on the document, just like you would in Microsoft Word, color themes, so on and so forth. And I'm actually glad I saw that notes item because it reminds me, if you've worked in Microsoft Word before, if you've worked in any desktop publishing software, PageMaker, WordPerfect, they are very similar in a lot of aspects, and they are also very different in a lot of aspects. But similarly, working with type and text in this program is a lot like working inside Microsoft Word. You set your font sizes, you set your kerning, you set your spacing between lines, whether you had to do double spaced or more. It just gives you a lot more exact control than something like Microsoft Word would. Over here on the right, we have our other palettes, and I just want to show you a few of these. We have our Pages palette, which is something new. So to get an idea what this does, I'm going to come and create a new document. And for now, I'm just going to leave everything as default and set OK. And you see, this is similar to, probably more similar to Illustrator, where I have this page. And it's not like, while you have layers inside of InDesign, they're not like layers inside of Photoshop. Layers inside of InDesign keep things isolated per page, where layers in Photoshop keep things isolated per document. It's a very important distinction. So right off the bat, you see all this Pages panel items light up. You know, I have a master, none. What does that mean? You know, I can come in here and create new pages, and you can see I can create new spreads because these are facing pages. You can see I can come in here and I can take these away. So I want to take this away, take this away. You can also see that I can change the size. So I just changed that to legal. I can come in here and change it to a half-size legal print. I can come in here and change it to a US business card size. So some very handy presets here in your Pages panel for creating multiple pages. Now if I come in here and create a new page, right, it defaults back to my standard 8.5 by 11. So I've got business card and 8.5 by 11. So whenever you're creating identity documents, sorry for the scrolling there, whenever you're creating identity documents, things like letterhead, business cards, folders, all in this, and you want them all in the same document for printing, usually you do want them separated for separate PDFs, but if you say you wanted to have them all in here for a presentation view, it's a great way to do it where you have all your documents in the same place and you can let go of them later and separate them out as needed. So you can see here I've also got layers. Layers are the same thing they always are. So I can come in here, create a shape, come in here, create another shape, and you see now I've got two rectangles in this layer. I'm going to go get rid of those. Okay, there's another important distinction inside of InDesign. And I'm going to talk about this when I come to color. So I'm going to create a new block. And I'm going to come in here, and you can see I have my basic swatches, C, Y, M, and K, and black, or K is black. So, you know, K black, magenta, cyan, magenta, yellow, and then some mixtures of those colors for other common elements used in print. You'll notice there's no white swatch. There is no such thing as white when working with desktop publishers. Anything that is white is simply the color of the paper. Now this can be a really interesting experience if you have been commissioned to design a piece, but they decide instead of printing it on white cardstock, maybe they print it on black cardstock. You get a completely different effect. Basically, all your white elements, quote unquote, on the page would now be black or the color of the paper. So, important distinction, no white in InDesign, although there are a few ways to fake it with white Pantone colors and stuff we'll go through later on in the course. But for right now, just to make the assumption, no white in InDesign. As far as other important panels in here, one of the things I am going to show you, and something that can be really helpful, especially if you're working in multiple documents, so I'm going to go and create a new document here. Again, File, New, Document. We'll click OK. Is you notice, just like the other programs, we have these two tabs that let me go back and forth. Well, there are some cases where we're going to be wanting to look at both things at once. And so I'm going to come over here to our Arrange Documents panel. And it looks like this little grid. You can come in here and you can say, hey, I want to do this as a 2-up. And bada bing, bada boom. There you go. So I have my second document over here, just my standard 8.5 by 11. And you can see I can move around and manipulate this document just like I would. I can come in here and scroll down, separate it, do whatever I need to do. Again, let's change that back to 2-up. And over here, I've got my first document. So this is really great if you're having to use common design elements from both and want to make sure you're sticking to the same parameters or you have the same styles or visually they look identical, especially if you're having to move things from one format to another. Say I had to take the basic information from the business card on the left and create letterhead on the right. Again, really useful feature in the Adobe Systems products. Also, you can come to this panel. This is kind of a new one for us where you can change and toggle things like rulers, frame edges, which won't do much for us here, smart lines, baseline grids, and characters. There's just a lot of content in the InDesign system. Something else I'm going to show you right off the bat, I'm going to select our type tool, and you see why I selected my dock up here changes. And if you've ever worked again inside a word publishing platform or Microsoft Word or WordPerfect or PageMaker, this should look very familiar. You have your font, you have your style of font, whether it's bold, regular, italic, your size, your leading, which is your space in between the lines, your tracking and kerning over here, which is your space between letters, offsets, vertical scales, horizontal scales, tilts, so you can do an artificial italic style. Your paragraphs, so just like in Word, you can align things right, align it left, align it justify center, so on and so forth. Really great for posters, for the justify with last line being center, if you need to do something like that. And you also have these indents, and so on and so forth. There is a lot to do with type in InDesign, so you can see it actually has its own panel. And what's really nice about this is you come through your fonts and get a sample of each one right off the bat. So if I know I need a serif font, and let's see, Bell looks pretty good, I can see a sample of it. I know it looks like I need to, so on and so forth. You can also open up something very important called your glyphs panel, or glyphs, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Glyphs panel is great. It actually allows me to come through and look at every letter form that's stored in a font. So Greek letter forms, accents, ligatures. I like that. Like I've got here with the FL, where it's actually, it's FL, but it's combined into the same thing. It's a ligature mark, so on and so forth. So this is really great if you're looking for a special character. You can't remember the keyboard shortcut, maybe to get the accented E found in French writing, or maybe if you're having to work with another language and have to add certain accents like you do in Spanish. Great place to find it. It also allows you to find things with specific flourishes. Like we have this Latin capital R here, and then we also have another capital letter R. The only difference is one has more of a flourish, whereas one does not. Here we have the ligature right here with the TH, which is great if you're working with title fonts. And you also have all your scripts, subscripts. So, your little dollars, your lower dollars, upper, lower, different sizes. Again, really great. Really a great tool, and something once I remember discovering inside of InDesign, I could spend hours going through these to find just the right combination of letters and marks to really make my text stand out. Some other things here that you just need to be aware of. Stroke is pretty much the same as it works in previous iterations of these programs in Illustrator and Photoshop. Color is a little bit different. Instead of you actually have a separate color panel and a separate swatches panel. Swatches are saved per project. They do not reset. Whereas, in Photoshop, when you save a file, sometimes you don't always get the colors back when you open back up the PSD file. In InDesign files, you can actually create entire swatch libraries and save them with your file. This is great, especially with print production and using different Pantone color books and things like that, and because all those can really affect how you use your swatches. Color here is also a little bit different. You have it right now where it's set to CYMK mode, so I can come in here. You can see I can play with these to make this kind of gold, and I've got 23, 30, 74, 30. This is basically your recipe for creating different colors inside of InDesign. You can also come here and change this to RGB or Lab. Lab we will not be using very often. RGB we will be using for anything that's a screen. One very important distinction between InDesign and Photoshop. InDesign will always assume that you're working in RGB to begin with, unless you have a previous camera or something that sets it to CYMK, which is pretty rare. RGB is how your screen interprets color. It's basically mixed up channels of red, green, and blue. Whereas printers, and you might know this from having to replace the ink in your printer before, either see things as cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or any mixture of those. And really, it doesn't matter. If you're working on a laser printer, you're still going to be mixing those. You're just going to be using toner instead of ink droplets like you would in an inkjet printer. So, again, important distinction. CYMK is going to be your default for InDesign, RGB for Photoshop. Now, of course, you can switch between those modes. Say you're creating a PDF that was just going to be viewed online. Do not save in CYMK. You'll get some really weird results make sure to work with RGB. Some other essentials in here that I can think of, useful things, is your layouts panel and coming to margins and columns. As we go further into this class, and especially once we get into InDesign, we'll be using something called the grid a lot. For a lot of designers, the grid is kind of the end-all be-all of how we organize our documents. It gives us a very select way of arranging items. For example, most newspapers are a 6-column grid. Next time you look at a newspaper, pick one up, you can actually see how those 6 columns are used and arranged. In a magazine, you may have 4 or even 3. On websites, even go with grids. You'll find some that use the 960 grid, which is a 12-column layout. So, grids are an important part of being a designer. And sometimes when we start a new document, we don't exactly know what kind of grid we need. For example, the business card over here, do we really need a grid for that? Well, when we start out, we might not think so, but as we go along, we might want to add one. So by having this selected, I can come in here and say, hey, I want to do 5 columns. And you can see how this changes my layout on my 8.5 by 11. And maybe I want to adjust the inside margins and outside. I can also come in here and unlink those. So if I'm working on something I know is going to go in a magazine as a 1-page spread, and they have to have a big gutter on the left, this allows me to change the inside and outside columns to meet different print specifications. Let's see. So I'm going to click OK, so you can see how that's saved. Really, everything else in the, every other specific in InDesign we'll cover as we go through each project. These again were the major parts. And again, to recap, we have our tools palette, our panels. Make sure you know about this 2-up and 3-up area. There is an area on the quiz that talks about this. Rulers, guides. All I would say on that is just, you have these rulers on your document. You can also come in here and reset your 0 point, and you can drag these down to create guides to use in your grid system. And you can see how those work. But everything else should either be covered in your text, or if you have any questions about anything about InDesign in particular, feel free to reach out to me, or if there's something in your text you don't quite understand that you would like me to cover. I'm pretty flexible, so just get a hold of me and I'll make sure to post a video either in the general news forum, which would be a great place to post a question. Also, students, if one of you sees a question posted to the general news forum about any of these videos and you happen to know the answer from either your reading or previous experience, I would encourage you to answer that, as you do earn bonus points in this course whenever you answer another student's question before I get to it. So if you see something I haven't answered yet, I really encourage you to go in and do that. Like I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to get a hold of me at any time at pferris@mc.edu. Just be sure that you put ART 205 in the subject line, or through Moodle and QuickMail, and I'll see it from there as well. This should be all the information you need to be successful in your quiz. If you do have any further questions, again, reach out. Good luck on your first quiz, and in the next set of videos, we will go through our first official project in this class, an Adobe Illustrator, working with international symbol sets and our drawing tools in the vector imaging software.